He was 17 years old when the world ended. Not the whole world, just his. The Roman army was in full retreat, broken, bleeding, men throwing down shields to run faster. Hannibal had done it again. And in the middle of that collapse, a teenage Roman officer drew his sword, rode into the fleeing mass, and said something nobody else was saying. Stop, not a request, a command. He told the men around him that anyone who kept running would die by his hand before they died by Hannibal's. The retreat stopped. His name was Scipio, and in that moment something locked into place inside him. For the next 30 years, Rome would keep asking him to do the same impossible thing, stand still while everyone else ran. Drawn from history. To know what Scipio was walking into, you have to feel what Hannibal had already done. By 216 BC, Rome had stopped asking whether it could beat Hannibal. It had started asking whether it would survive him. He had crossed the Alps. He had descended into Italy and destroyed every army Rome sent against him. Trebia, Lake Trasimene, and then Cannae, where, in a single afternoon, he surrounded and annihilated approximately 70,000 Roman soldiers through a tactical envelopment so perfect that it is still studied today as the definition of battlefield genius. Rome collected the rings of its dead. They filled bushels with them. The city prepared to fall. It didn't, because Rome had a refusal to accept defeat that operated almost at the biological level. But the allies were wavering. The treasury was empty. The Senate was paralyzed. And then word came from Spain. Scipio's father and uncle were dead. Killed in the campaign meant to cut off Hannibal's supply lines. The strategy hadn't failed. The men executing it had simply been destroyed. He was 24 years old. His father was gone. His uncle was gone. And Rome needed someone to go to Spain, the same theater that had just swallowed 2 experienced commanders, and somehow turn it around. Nobody wanted the command. Scipio walked into the Senate and asked for it. What he felt standing there, nobody recorded. What he understood about duty, about the particular obligation that loss creates, nobody needed to write down. He already knew why he was going. The Senate said yes, partly from desperation, partly because he was his father's son, partly because the alternative was sending nobody. Spain changed him before he ever fought there. He arrived in 210 BC and spent months doing something Roman commanders almost never did. He listened. He gathered intelligence obsessively about Carthaginian supply lines, about the distances between the 3 enemy armies operating in Spain, about local politics, local geography, local grievances. He learned that those 3 armies were spread too far apart to reinforce each other quickly. He learned that the lagoon protecting Cartagena, New Carthage, the hub of all Carthaginian power in Spain, shallowed dramatically in the afternoon when the wind shifted. He learned it from fishermen, from local contacts, from the kind of patient attention that most generals skip in favor of action. On the day of the assault, the frontal attack held the garrison's attention. His men waded through the shallows on the undefended side. The city fell before nightfall. But what Scipio did afterward was what separated him from every commander Rome had produced before him. He released the Spanish hostages, all of them, unharmed, with gifts. No conditions attached, no oath demanded, no loyalty extracted through threat. He sent them home and let the contrast speak for itself. The contrast between how Carthage had held them and how Rome had returned them. The Spanish tribes began switching sides. He had won something the military victory alone could never have bought, and he filed it away. The knowledge that trust deployed correctly was a more durable weapon than fear. He was still learning. He was also already teaching himself things Rome didn't have a name for yet. He arrived in Spain thinking battles won wars. He left understanding that people did. By 206 BC, Carthage had nothing left in Spain. Scipio came home carrying victories that made the Senate uncomfortable, and a popularity that made them more uncomfortable still. He was elected consul at an age so young the rules had to be waived, and then he said the thing that made Rome genuinely afraid. He wanted to invade Africa, not defend Italy, not continue Fabius's patient strategy of avoiding pitched battle, cross the sea, take the war to Carthage itself, force Hannibal to come home. Fabius Maximus, the man whose caution had kept Rome alive after Cannae. called it recklessness. The Senate debated. The objections were real. Hannibal was still in Italy, still dangerous, still capable of destroying any force that underestimated him. Scipio's answer was quiet and precise. Patience was bleeding Rome to death. Hannibal in Italy without resupply was a problem Rome could endure. Another decade of burning Italian farms was a problem Rome could not. He got the command. With restrictions that made clear the Senate wanted close enough control to claim credit if he won, and enough distance to survive if he lost. He sailed for Africa in 204 BC. He was 32 years old. Everything he had learned, Spain, the hostages, the fishermen in the lagoon, the understanding that people matter as much as armies, he carried with him across that water. He would need all of it. Spain had taught him how to win. Africa would test whether he had learned enough. Africa didn't offer clean solutions. It offered problems that required improvisation before breakfast. Syphax, a Numidian king once a Roman ally, had switched to Carthage and was providing the cavalry Scipio needed most. To break that alliance, Scipio needed cavalry of his own. He found it in Massinissa, a Numidian prince whose throne Syphax had stolen, who had every personal reason for revenge and no army left to pursue it. Scipio offered him a war. Massinissa offered him horses and riders who had been preparing for this moment for years. Then Scipio burned Syphax's camp at night. Not a siege, not a frontal assault, darkness and fire. His agents moved through the camp before dawn, setting tents alight while soldiers slept. The screaming and the chaos and the men running without weapons into a Roman infantry that was waiting, formed, and ready. It was devastating, and it forced the moment Scipio had been engineering from the day he arrived. Hannibal was recalled from Italy. Rome hadn't defeated Hannibal. It had forced him to come home. 15 years. 15 years Hannibal had been in Italy. Undefeated, unbroken, still capable of destroying armies. And now, because a Roman had carried the war to Africa, he had to come home. They met at Zama in 202 BC. Hannibal brought 80 war elephants, the weapon that had changed the nature of ancient warfare. Creatures that could shatter infantry formations through terror before the real fighting began. No general who had faced them unprepared had survived the experience intact. Scipio had prepared. He had trained his legions to open lanes in their formations, channels of empty space that the elephants, guided by noise and pressure, would naturally follow, passing through the Roman line rather than breaking it. Harmless corridors for unstoppable animals. The elephants charged, the lanes opened, the Roman line held. For the first time in 15 years, Hannibal had run out of answers. Hannibal watched his opening weapon dissolve without effect, watched 15 years of tactical innovation neutralized by a man who had spent months thinking about exactly this problem. What followed was infantry against infantry. Roman discipline against Carthaginian veterans across a dusty African plain, two of the finest armies of the ancient world at close quarters. The outcome genuinely unclear for longer than anyone on either side wanted. Then Massinissa's cavalry returned from its sweep around the battlefield. They hit Hannibal's rear. The same move that had produced Cannae, executed now against the man who had invented it. Hannibal escaped. His army did not. The war was over. Scipio came home to streets full of people and a senate full of men who had doubted him. They gave him the name Africanus. They shared credit for the victory they had nearly prevented. They celebrated the man they had sent to Africa with restrictions designed to contain him. And then they began to fear him. Not his loyalty. There was no reasonable basis for doubting that. His size. A man that popular, that capable, that young, with that many soldiers who would follow him anywhere, represented a kind of gravitational pull that Republican institutions had always been designed to prevent. Cato the Elder became his instrument of diminishment. Investigations, accusations of financial corruption, relentless political pressure, not to convict him because the charges couldn't survive scrutiny, to wear him down, to make him smaller, to remind Rome that no man should cast a shadow that large. Scipio watched it happen with the same clarity that had won him every battle he had ever fought. He had spent 30 years reading battlefields. Now he was reading Rome. It was no less dangerous. He had spent his career reading people and situations with precision, and this situation was not difficult to read. He had become inconvenient. He retired to his estate at Laternum on the Italian coast, away from Rome, away from the Senate that had needed him desperately and then spent years trying to make him forget it. He watched the sea, and he stayed away from the city that no longer knew what to do with him. He died there, the date uncertain, the circumstances quiet. What is certain is the instruction he left for his tomb, 4 words in Latin that he chose carefully, knowing they would outlast everything else. Ingrata patria, ne ossa quidem mea habes. Ungrateful homeland, you do not even have my bones. The boy who stopped a rout at 17, who asked for the command nobody wanted at 24, who learned from fishermen what armies couldn't tell him, who won Spain through trust when brutality would have been faster, who crossed into Africa when Rome said, stay home, who reversed Cannae against the man who invented it. He gave Rome everything. Rome gave him victory, then fame, then suspicion, then exile, and finally, silence. He chose those 4 words because they were true, because precision had always been his language, because the man who had spent 30 years seeing situations more clearly than the people around him was not going to pretend, at the end, that this one was something other than what it was. He had held when everything said run. Rome had run anyway. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, please subscribe and leave a like. You can also write in the comments which historical topics you'd like to see next. See you in the next video.